Hello friends, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you haven't been here before. I'm Erin, and today's video is going to be about a conspiracy theory. So, conspiracy theories I think are pretty cool. Most of the time, I don't believe them. This one I hadn't heard about before until a few months ago. And when I heard about it, it kind of blew my mind, and I was like, well, how the hell did I not know that this was a conspiracy theory all this time? Apparently it's been around for a while, and it has to do with the Titanic. Cue Celine Dion singing, even though I can't put that on here because, you know, copyright issues and all. So yes, today's video is about Titanic, the ship that never sank. That's right, this conspiracy theory says that Titanic never actually sank and that it's a completely different ship that's at the bottom of the ocean. So you may be asking yourself, well, what ship is at the bottom of the ocean? Well, it's said that it is Titanic's sister ship, the Olympic. Now, the Olympic was also made by the White Star Line and was very similar to Titanic, so they could have been easily confused. And I'm going to go over why people say that it is actually the Olympic at the bottom of the ocean and not the Titanic. So you may be asking yourself, well, why would it be the Olympic at the bottom of the ocean? Well, apparently this is one big giant insurance scam that went on with the White Star Line. So much like the Titanic, the Olympic did not have very good luck as a ship. On September 20th, 1911, the Olympic collided with the HMS Hawke off the Isle of Wight. Now this accident was blamed on the White Star Line and the Olympic and not the HMS Hawke. So they wouldn't have been able to get money from the HMS Hawke for the damages that had occurred to the Olympic. Of course, this accident gave problems to the White Star Line because the Olympic had to be taken out of service for its repairs. This accident, which the Royal Navy blamed on the Olympic, as I said, actually pushed the maiden voyage for the Titanic from March 20th to April 10th. Now this was a problem for White Star Line because not only was the Olympic now out of service and they could not make any money off of that because it wasn't running, but since it bumped the maiden voyage of Titanic, that also cost them some money. So throw in your legal fees for the accident itself and the cost of repairs, and you have the perfect storm of having some money issues. Thus, this is why people believe that it would lead to an insurance scam. If you heard that snore, that's my dog Dixie. So any weird snorting noises, no, I don't have pigs, it's my dogs. So because of these money issues, this is when people claim that the White Star Lines came up with the scheme to switch the ships and then collect on some insurance money. You ask, how would they get the insurance money? Well, supposedly, they sunk this ship on purpose. So after this grand scheme was put into place, that's when they started to make the switch to make Olympic look like Titanic. One of the first things they would have done is they would have carpeted the floors of the Olympic, because in the Olympic it was tile. And since it was tile and it had already gone on a voyage, there were footprints and stains on the tile that wouldn't have been able to be removed. And thus the passengers that were on Titanic for its maiden voyage would see this and wonder what the heck was going on. So they covered it up. They threw some carpet on it. So I'll get into some of the more physical details, but there are also some other things that are said about staff that was supposed to work on the Titanic and famous people who were supposed to be on the Titanic, and why it plays into the theory that the Titanic wasn't the actual ship that sank, but that the Olympic was. First of all, the Olympic was used in all the advertising for the White Star Lines. Now, some people will say that's because, well, of course, that's because the Olympic was built first, and that's what they used the pictures for. Plus, the ships looked very similar, so most people, without knowing what the specific differences were in the advertising, would have no idea which ship was Titanic and which was Olympic, unless they knew the specific details. So the people who were building the Titanic in the shipyard and when the Olympic came in and was being repaired, they have said that yes, the two ships were in fact switched. They were also told by some higher ups and some government officials that if they ever said anything about the Titanic being switched, that it would be quote unquote the last job that they ever had. And apparently one crew member even said that a member from the government came up and read them the Official Secrets Act. They were told that if they ever said the real reason for the sinking of the ship, that they would get up to 20 years in jail and they would never have a job ever again. Sounds pretty seedy, doesn't it? Well, then we have to go to the wealthy people that were supposed to be on the ship. And the one famous person who was supposed to be on Titanic for the maiden voyage was J.P. Morgan. Now, along with J.P. Morgan, there were other first-class passengers that had canceled their trip, but J.P. Morgan stands out because he supposedly canceled his trip because he was sick. Later on, a newspaper came out that had J.P. Morgan out and about when he was supposed to be sick, looking just fine and dandy. So why didn't he get on the Titanic? Furthermore, J.P. Morgan had a lot of stuff that was supposed to go across with him on Titanic. In the movie, obviously, we see the car, we see all this other cargo. Well, he had 7 bronze statues that he was going to have shipped. Guess what? He had them removed from the ship so they would not go across. Why would he do that? He could just have somebody go pick it up when it made its voyage over, and then he eventually made his voyage over. I mean, he had the money to do it. So why take the statues off the ship? Unless he knew that it was going to sink. So speaking of J.P. Morgan, he had a ship called the SS California. This ship was sent into the middle of the ocean right around the time that Titanic was set to take off and sink. What's so mysterious about this ship? There were no passengers on it. Why would he send an empty ship out into the middle of the ocean? Supposedly this boat just went to the middle of the Atlantic and it stopped, like it was waiting for something. Perhaps the ship's sinking. The other mysterious thing about the Californian is that it carried 3,000 wool blankets and jackets. Why of all things would this ship go out into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, stop, and have all these blankets and jackets? I mean, were they expecting people to have to come on that were really cold? Think about it. One of the survivors said that one of the officers assured them that the SS Californian was going to come and rescue everybody. However, the SS Californian apparently had some navigational issues that night. They were actually 12 miles away from where Titanic would be, and they never came to the ship's aid. So now I'll get on to some physical differences and similarities and why people say that the ships were switched. So one of the reasons that you could tell the difference between the Olympic and the Titanic were the portholes on sea deck. The windows on the Olympic were unevenly spaced and they were made of thin windows, while the windows of Titanic were large and evenly spaced. So you may wonder why I'm talking about the portholes. Well, if you look at the picture of Titanic as it's docked and ready to go on its maiden voyage, there are 16 unevenly spaced thin windows on the ship, where in pictures of it being built, it shows 14. So supposedly Olympic had 16 windows, while the Titanic had 14, and if you look at the pictures of Titanic on its maiden voyage, there are 16 windows. Now, another way to tell the difference between the two was the bridge position of each ship. So the upper deck of the Olympic was even with the deck below it, whereas Titanic's was overhanging the lower deck. So another reason that people say that the Olympic is the one at the bottom of the ocean has to do with the actual names that are on the boats. So supposedly these names are supposed to be engraved into the side of the ship. Well, if you look at Titanic's lettering, it had been riveted on. And now that the ship is at the bottom and, it's a wreckage at the bottom of the ocean, a couple of the letters have fallen off. And where those two letters have fallen off It looks as if the letters M and P can be seen underneath it, engraved into the metal on the ship. What ship would have the letters M and P? The Olympic. So another big thing that's under scrutiny are different parts that have come off the Olympic after it went out of service, as well as parts that are still on Titanic that are down at the bottom of the ocean. So the part numbers that were on Olympic would have been 400, while Titanic's numbers are 401. Now the propeller that's down at the bottom of the ocean that is attached to the Titanic, yes, you would say, well, that's the correct number. 401 goes with the Titanic. However, supposedly, when the Olympic was being repaired, they had taken the propeller off of Titanic to put it onto the Olympic. So, there you go. That would mean that if they had taken it off of the real Titanic and put it onto the Olympic, if the propeller says 401, it would be the Olympic down at the bottom of the ocean. So the Olympic was taken out of service in 1935. When it was taken out of service, there were different pieces of the ship that went to different places. So the paneling in the aft first class staircase came off of the Olympic and it went to a hotel in the United Kingdom. Supposedly it went to the White Swan Hotel. Now, on this paneling and the staircase, supposedly on the frame it says 401, which, as I said, 401 would have been parts that would have been on Titanic. So why would parts from Titanic be on the Olympic unless it was the Olympic that's at the bottom of the ocean and not the Titanic? I confuse you yet? Okay. So of course, as I said, this is a conspiracy theory. And I'm sure that many people are probably screaming at the screen right now, why would they kill all these people and do this just for insurance money? And I have to say, I kind of agree with you. Why would they do such a thing? So here are some arguments against why this conspiracy theory is probably just a load of crap. So we'll go back to the numbers 400 and 401 to start off with. Of course, the propeller would say 401 if it's the actual Titanic at the bottom of the ocean. I didn't find anything in my reading that actually proved that the propeller from the Titanic was removed and placed on the Olympic as the Olympic was being repaired in the shipyard. So in addition to this magic propeller, there are actually other pieces and parts that are strewn across the bottom of the ocean that have the number 401 stamped on them, which would mean that that is the Titanic. Now, as for the whole White Swan Hotel thing, I'm not really sure what happened there. Perhaps somebody wrote it on there. I don't know. But I don't know that I'm buying that they switched the two ships. So I've already touched on some of the differences, which were the portholes and the way that the decks looked and what have you. Well, there's also other differences between the Olympic and the Titanic. First of all, A deck on Titanic was enclosed in glass, while A deck on Olympic was open air. Another difference were the two wheelhouses of the ship. So Titanic's wheelhouse, the front surface of it was flat, while on the Olympic it was more of a curved shape. One of the big differences between the Olympic and the Titanic was that on B deck, on the Olympic, it was a promenade. So it was open, everybody could walk all the way around. It was a deck, essentially. So Titanic's B deck did not have a promenade. It was made up of the verandas and the suites that made up the first class rooms. So it's not as if passengers could just walk around B deck. It was blocked off because it made, like on cruise ships that we have today, like your own private balcony type of deal, or your windows facing out from your room. So another reason why this conspiracy theory is talked against is, why the hell would White Star Line bring all this negativity onto themselves by sinking a ship on purpose? First of all, this was Titanic's maiden voyage. It already looked bad that it sunk on its maiden voyage. Why would they do that on purpose on the maiden voyage? Why not wait until second or third crossing of the ocean? brought a lot more scrutiny since it was the maiden voyage. The whole negative publicity and everything else that would have come from this ship sinking due to an accident would far outweigh the benefits of insurance money for them. It already would make their business take a hit, so either way, they were going to end up losing money. So essentially what I'm saying is this whole scheme would hurt them more than it would help them if that was true, that they purposely sunk this ship. The other thing is the Olympic actually stayed in service after it was repaired from the damage that it had. This ship went from the early 1900s to about 1935, like I said. So while Olympic was still in service, during World War I, it was taken away from being a luxury liner and turned into a troop transit ship. And then, after World War I, it turned back into being a luxury liner. So you would think over the span of the years, there would definitely be more evidence to prove that the Olympic was really the Titanic and that it had been switched. During that time, somebody probably would have discovered some kind of evidence while it was in service that proved that they had switched the ships and that the Olympic was actually that Titanic and that the ship that was at the bottom of the ocean was actually the Olympic. So the number one reason why this conspiracy theory probably isn't true is because this would have taken a heck of a lot of scheming and developing things and keeping secrets from the public and what have you to keep this whole thing under wraps. So it would have been very hard to carry out this whole elaborate plot. I mean, if you think about it, these aren't like little boats we're talking about. These were giant ocean liners. So I'm pretty sure that aside from the people working in the shipyard, people who lived near the area probably would have been like, why are they taking parts from the Titanic and putting it on the Olympic? I mean, these things don't happen like that. They don't just magically change. So those are the arguments for and against the Titanic conspiracy theory and whether or not it was the ship that never sank. What do you guys think? Me personally, I kind of think it's probably the Titanic down at the bottom of the ocean. I just think that between the whole grand scheme of things, like I said, this would have hurt the White Star Lines more than it would have helped it with collecting insurance money. I mean, like I said, why would you sink a ship on its maiden voyage? Just wait a couple voyages if you're going to do an insurance scheme, right? It just seems unlikely to me that a company would be so cold-hearted and money-greedy that they would purposefully sink a ship filled with thousands of people just so they could get insurance money for a ship they already had. It just seems very unlikely to me. I mean, maybe it's me trying to see the good in people. I don't know. I just don't think that they would purposefully sink this ship. My opinion is, yes, it's the Titanic at the bottom of the ocean. Alright guys, that's it for this video. If you want to see more like this video, go ahead and leave me a comment down below and let me know. There's some other conspiracy theories that I'm looking into that I'd like to do videos on, so if you'd like to see them, go ahead and let me know. Also, if you like this video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. That also lets me know that you guys liked the video and you would like to see more like it. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, go ahead and do that too so you can see all my new videos when they come out. Alright guys, have a great day or night whenever you're watching this. Bye!